Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Peterson. I'm a transportation planner for the McHenry County DOT. First, I want to thank everyone for coming to the Ackman Road information meeting tonight. Our staff greatly appreciates the input provided by local residents, business owners, and elected officials to help inform the direction of this project. I want to let all of the attendees know that the meeting tonight is being recorded for our staff's use in the planning process. All attendee videos and mics have been disabled, though. While we are not able to meet in person, we still hope that our virtual meeting tonight is interactive as possible. At any point, if you have questions or comments, feel free to put them in the Q&A box available in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Later in the meeting, our partner from Sam Schwartz will be conducting live polling on a variety of topics relating to the Ackman Road project. For the live polling, we'll be utilizing Mentimeter, a polling software available through your smartphone or computer. If you want to review any of the topics or materials covered tonight, they are available on the project website, along with resources from past meetings. In addition to the input gathered today, the county will be accepting comments submitted through our website until October 10th. The last thing I want to discuss is an overview of the schedule. First, we're going to show a 20-minute pre-recorded video that discusses the current conditions along Ackman Road and pedestrian design considerations moving forward. After the video, we will discuss bicycle and pedestrian accommodations throughout the corridor, followed by a discussion of intersection design and considerations for incorporating roundabouts. Finally, the last topic we will discuss is segment 2, which are the intersections of Ackman Road at Red Tail, Huntley, and Swanson. The meeting will conclude with a Q&A session where our staff and consultants will be available to answer any questions not addressed earlier in the meeting. Once again, thank you for attending, and here's the pre-recorded video.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Dauscher, and I'm the Planning Liaison at McHenry County Division of Transportation. Joining me are Ryan Peterson, Transportation Planner, and Scott Hennings, Assistant Director of Transportation at the DOT. This presentation has been pre-recorded for viewing before, during, or after the live meeting, and I'll walk you through some of the work done to date on the Ackman Road Feasibility Study. What you're seeing now is a video of Ackman Road and what it'll look like in 2050 if no changes are implemented. During this presentation, I'll start us off with some information about the study and the need for the project. Then Ryan will discuss the 3 segments of the project, as well as a couple of the different concepts for the roadway. Following that, Scott will talk about traffic operations and the information that was determined throughout the study. Finally, I'll end the presentation by talking about the project's next steps in the September 29th live meeting. As mentioned, this meeting is for a feasibility study on Ackman Road from Haligus Road to Randall Road. The purpose of the feasibility study is to look in depth at possible engineering solutions for the corridor. Since the first public open house meeting on May 30th last year, the DOT, along with its consultant, Transsystems, has been looking at the existing conditions to identify different alternatives that address 3 key project needs: safety, traffic operations, and connectivity. Once identified, those alternatives can be examined further during future project phases, including preliminary engineering, design engineering, land acquisition, and then construction. Identifying preferred alternatives also helps with identifying potential funding opportunities for the project. Let's review 3 key project needs that are being addressed by this feasibility study in a bit more detail. The first is safety. Along Ackman Road, there are undefined shoulders, areas with poor pavement condition, and poor drainage, as well as intersections with tight turning maneuvers. Off the roadway, sidewalks are narrow or non-existent, and the corridor lacks a defined space for cyclists. There are also unmarked crosswalks throughout the corridor, making it difficult for people on foot or bike to get across the road. The second need is traffic operations. Traffic operations refers to the movement of vehicles through an intersection. Key components of efficient traffic operation includes turn lanes, traffic controls, storage bays, and turning radii. One way to measure efficiencies in traffic operations is through measuring the level of service. Think of of the level of service as how easily or comfortably a user can travel through a corridor or intersection. Level of service is measured from A to F, with A and B being the most favorable, C and D being moderate, and F being the least favorable. Throughout the corridor, a lack of turn lanes at intersection contributes to a poor level of service and negatively impacts traffic operations. The third and final need is connectivity. Throughout the corridor, the number of travel lanes and the width of the roadway varies. Some portions of Ackman Road have curbs, while others only have shoulders. For the pedestrian facilities, there are a mix of sidewalks and bike paths, primarily along the eastern half of the corridor. However, large gaps in the sidewalk and path network exist, and opportunities to cross Ackman Road are limited. The pedestrian facilities also have different widths and utilize different materials. Basically, there exists a lack of consistency both on and off the roadway along this corridor. Now I'll turn it over to Ryan to talk about the division of the segments of the roadway.
Thanks, Emily, for the great introduction. As Emily mentioned, I'm Ryan Peterson. I'm a transportation planner for the McHenry County DOT. I'm going to be talking about a variety of different topics relating to the Ackman Road project. The first topic I want to talk about is the division of segments for the Ackman Road project. So to make it easier for attendees to ask questions and for staff to provide more in-depth answers, we have divided the corridor into 3 segments. Segment 1 is from Haligus Road to Lakewood Road. Segment 2 is from Redtail Drive to Hunley Road and includes the intersection with Swanson Road. Segment 3 is from Golf Course Road to Randall Road and includes the Westport Ridge intersection. The project plans to address the identified needs on all 3 segments, but different treatments or strategies may be employed for each section depending on the traffic volumes, adjacent land uses, and/or existing conditions. We hope that this feasibility study will help us prioritize which segment has the greatest existing need and the most consensus from the public on solutions. We'll then look to accelerate engineering on that segment first and address the remaining segments at a later date. We also hope this project will give us an idea of potential interim improvements that can be made immediately and at a low cost. Finally, this feasibility study will consider and be consistent with other long-term transportation projects in the area. For example, both alternatives for segment 1 will plan for the future extension of Ackman Road west to Illinois 47. The extension project is included within the county's 2040 long-range transportation plan and is supported by the Village of Lake in the Hills. The 2050 projected traffic volumes you will see later in this presentation take this extension project into account. The second topic I want to talk about are the 2 different cross-section designs proposed by our consultants. The county is looking for input on 2 different cross-section designs, a rural design with shoulders and ditches, and an urban design with curb and gutter. A roadway cross-section displays the desired width, slope, and elevation of a roadway design. The major differences between the 2 proposed cross-sections is the placement of the multi-use path and the overall width. In areas with constrained right-of-way, the urban section is usually preferred. The rural cross-section allows the multi-use path to be placed further away from the roadway, while the urban cross-section brings the multi-use path much closer to the roadway. And the last topic I want to talk about are the existing bicycle and pedestrian facilities along the project. Currently, on the west end of the project, there's an 8-foot wide shared use path on the south side of Ackman Road, starting just east of Lakewood Road, that travels for approximately 0.3 miles before terminating in front of the residential area east of Albrecht Road. Continuing east, there are no existing bicycle or pedestrian facilities until Amberwood Drive. On the east portion of the project limits, there are a mixture of sidewalks and shared use paths. A sidewalk on the north side of Ackman Road runs from Sterling Meadows Park east through Golf Course Road and continues to Randall Road, where it connects to a shared use path that runs north to Crystal Lake South High School. At Sterling Meadows Park, the sidewalk connects to a shared use path that runs to the west and enters Willow Edge Park, where the path then turns north along Hunley Road. The new rapid flashing beacon crossing on Ackman Road at Amberwood Drive, just east of Hunley Road, is located along this path connecting to the shared use paths that run through Woods Creek Park and Fedster Park along the south side of Ackman Road. While many bicycle and pedestrian accommodations are present, the Ackman Road corridor does not have the desired connectivity considering the residential nature of the neighborhood and the proximity of a nearby high school and several grade schools. Not to mention there are 15 recreational spaces in the corridor, which are currently not accessible by walking or biking. By connecting these short segments of sidewalks and shared use paths, it will greatly improve the safety and accessibility for those wishing to access all of the amazing amenities offered throughout this corridor. And now I'll turn it over to Scott Hennings, who will talk more about the project.
The need to improve traffic operations at the intersections along Ackman Road was frequently cited by many attendees at our May 30th, 2019 open house. Typically, roadway agencies improve traffic flow at intersections in one of two ways: by installing a traffic signal and associated turn lanes, or by constructing a roundabout. These two intersection designs provide several unique advantages, but also each have challenges that need to be considered. Traffic signals are the most common intersection type that most drivers experience on a daily basis. MCDOT has 42 intersections in its system with traffic signals, while IDOT and other local governments have many more on their systems. Traffic signals have the advantage of reducing intersection delay when compared with stop sign control. They also typically require less right-of-way than roundabouts, even when you factor in additional left and right turn lanes that may be needed. Finally, traffic signals can utilize emergency vehicle preemption, whereby emergency vehicles are given a green light as they approach the intersection. However, traffic signals also pose some challenges when compared with other intersection designs. For one, the potential for serious or even fatal collisions can actually increase at an intersection after a traffic signal is installed. Collisions that occur at signalized intersections tend to be more severe rear end and angle crashes with vehicles traveling at high rates of speed. Traffic signals can also result in higher wait times on minor legs of the intersection when compared against stop control or roundabout intersections. And finally, traffic signals carry with them a significant upfront cost of purchasing the signal equipment, as well as the long-term maintenance costs of replacing and powering the equipment. Roundabouts, on the other hand, are much safer than a stop or traffic signal controlled intersection. According to a study by the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, roundabouts reduce the types of crashes where people are seriously hurt or killed by 78% when compared with conventional stop-controlled and signalized intersections. They do this by reducing the number of conflict points from 32 down to 8, and by reducing the speeds of vehicles moving through the intersection. Roundabouts also reduce vehicle delay at the intersection, especially for minor legs that would typically see longer red lights with a conventional traffic signal. Finally, the lower and safer vehicle speeds in a roundabout encourages cyclists and pedestrians to utilize the intersections. A challenge with roundabout intersections include a higher potential for driver confusion. Even though the 8 new roundabouts are nearing construction in McHenry County, only 7 roundabouts currently exist in our area. This means that many of our residents have little experience navigating through these intersections. Roundabouts typically require more right-of-way and have a larger footprint within the proximity of the intersection when compared with a signalized intersection. However, as you move away from the intersection, the right-of-way requirements decrease dramatically since roundabouts require fewer turn lanes approaching the intersection. As Emily mentioned earlier, this feasibility study divided the Ackman Road corridor into 3 main segments. The first being from Haligus Road to Lakewood Road, the second from Redtail Drive to Huntley Road, and the third from Golf Course Road to Randall Road. For each segment, the study team looked at a few different options or alternatives and compared them against the existing conditions. The alternatives were scored against a set of criteria that considered safety, mobility, environmental impacts, and cost. So let's jump right into segment 1. Currently, the Haligus and Lakewood intersections are stop controlled. Option 1 looks at adding a traffic signal and turn lanes at Haligus Road, while leaving the Lakewood Road intersection with a stop control. Option 2, on the other hand, looked at the potential for roundabouts at both intersections. This slide shows an aerial view of the 2 intersections under option 1. You will notice that the map on the left shows Ackman Road extended west beyond Haligus Road, which is a future project identified in the county's long-range transportation plan. The Ackman-Lakewood intersection is shown to remain a 4-way stop because traffic signals were not warranted at this location in the future design year of 2050. This next slide shows option 2, which proposes roundabouts at both intersections. The medians and the center of the roundabouts are shown to be landscaped, and pedestrian crossings will be added to all 4 legs to connect the proposed sidewalks and trails. When comparing options 1 and 2 against the 2050 no-build conditions, which shows the intersections with no improvements, both options performed well in the mobility category, improving the overall level of service and delay at the intersections. The roundabout alternative performed better than the traffic signal alternative in the safety category, as well as the water quality and cost categories. Next, let's move on to segment 2, which encompasses the Red Tail, Swanson, and Huntley Road intersections. Currently, vehicles approaching Ackman Road from the 3 north-south roads are required to stop and wait for an opening in traffic to make their turn onto Ackman Road. Option 1 maintains the free flow of traffic along Ackman Road and a stop control for the 3 minor streets, but adds turn lanes at the Red Tail and Swanson intersections. This alternative would allow traffic to flow more smoothly along Ackman Road because turning traffic would not interfere with through traffic as it does today. Option 2 adds a traffic signal and turn lanes at all 3 intersections, while option 3 adds a roundabout at all 3 intersections. Note that the Huntley Road intersection is shown with a right turn bypass lane to handle the higher traffic volumes at this intersection. Options 4 and 5 consider realigning Swanson Road to intersect Ackman Road across from Red Tail Drive, creating a 4-leg intersection in place of 2 closely spaced T intersections. Option 4 utilizes traffic signals at both intersections, while option 5 shows roundabouts. Both of these realignment alternatives will require significant property acquisition to accommodate the new roadway. When comparing these 5 options against one another, it is easy to become overwhelmed by the amount of information. Looking at safety improvement only, the roundabout alternatives scored the best. Each option improves the overall level of service when compared against the no build in year 2050. However, it's important to understand that under all options, vehicle delay will increase when compared with the conditions today. Looking at the property acquisition criteria, options 1 and 2 scored the best. And when comparing cost, the roundabout options typically scored better than the traffic signal options. Finally, let's move on to segment 3, which looked at the area from Golf Course Road to Randall Road. Today, the intersection with Golf Course Road is signalized, but lacks turn lanes to separate through traffic with traffic making right turns. The intersection with Westport Ridge is a 2-way stop controlled, while the intersection with Randall Road is signalized and fully built out with all turn lanes. Generally, no improvements are being considered at the Randall Road intersection. Option 1 considers the addition of through lanes on Ackman Road, along with a northbound right turn lane on Golf Course Road and the signalization of Westport Ridge. Option 2 considers the installation of a multi-lane roundabout at the Golf Course intersection and the installation of a single-lane roundabout at Westport Ridge. Both options improve safety over the no-build, but again, the roundabout is superior to the traffic signal for reducing serious and fatal crashes. Both options improve mobility for drivers over the existing conditions. However, the roundabout option performs better than the traffic signal option, especially for the critical movement during the peak hour. Due to the larger footprint of the multi-lane roundabout, the traffic signal option performs better on the potential displacement and property acquisition categories.
Once the feasibility study is concluded, the project will move into engineering to develop more details for the selected solutions. By the end of this study, DOT will have learned about the community interest in the project. This includes not just those who use the roadway or live near it, but also the municipalities along the corridor, which includes Lake in the Hills, Lakewood, and Crystal Lake. The chosen solutions that are carried forward from the study will be selected based on feedback from the community, municipalities, and users. The chosen solutions will also take into account the roadway itself and what improvements are needed based on modeling, traffic data, and other information. The identified solutions will open up the project for possible federal, state, or regional grants. Depending on what alternatives are chosen, different funding sources may be pursued. Some grants focus on bicycle and pedestrian improvements, some look at safety or congestion, and others are for creating safe routes for kids to walk or bike to school. The project's eligibility for these funding sources may be dependent on the types of improvements chosen. Once funding has been identified, the project will move forward into Phase 2 design engineering, acquiring any necessary land around the corridor, and then construction. This will happen over a number of years. There are a number of resources available on the project website, and I'm going to show you how to get there. First, go to mchenrycountydot.org. That will take you to the DOT homepage. Then on the left-hand side, click the Projects tab. Once there, scroll all the way down to the bottom and click on Ackman Road Feasibility Study. Clicking that will take you to the project page, where you can see resources such as an environmental screening memo, traffic operations report, the road safety report, and a summary of and resources from the first public meeting held on May 30th, 2019. There are opportunities to comment before, during, and after the public meeting on October 6th. Presently, on the project website, there is a comment form that can be filled out. Questions received prior to or during the meeting will be answered in the topic breakout sessions and during the open discussion and Q&A at 6:00 p.m. During the meeting, there will be opportunities for participants to send questions using the chat function, or if you are listening via phone, you can use the raise hand function by typing *9. After the meeting, please use the comment forms on the project website to provide additional feedback. All comments are due by October 23rd, 2020 to be included in the public record. For your comment to be included as part of the live meeting on October 6th, please have your comment in by October 4th. We will be posting a recording of the meeting on the project website. Thank you so much for your time and feedback. We really appreciate it.
Excellent. And now I will turn it over to Catherine from Sam Schwartz, who will be leading our first polling exercise. Thank you.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Nickley, and I'm a transportation planner with Sam Schwartz. And today I'm going to be sharing polling questions throughout our virtual meeting. Since this meeting is virtual, we hope to learn more about your opinions and familiarity along Ackman Road. Today, we're going to be using the platform called Mentimeter. It's a popular and easy polling site that you can access via your smartphone, your tablet, or your computer. So let's get started. Using your phone or tablet or computer, open an internet browser such as Chrome, Firefox, Safari, or Internet Explorer and type into the internet search menti.com, that's MENTI.com, and enter the numbers at the top of the screen, 948735. If you're on your phone, it might look like this. And if you're on your computer, it might look like this. So these numbers will stay at the top of your screen throughout this poll. Once you're here, click the heart in the bottom right-hand corner. If you are on your phone, it might be right in the middle. So great, I see a lot of people are online, which is awesome. I'll give it a few more seconds while people are joining and we'll get started on our first poll. Alrighty. So I see a good number of you folks are online, so we're going to get started with our first poll. And the first question is just going to be a practice question and get a feel for this platform. So what is your favorite season? Give it a few more seconds. I'm seeing a lot of fall lovers out there. To all of you, happy October. Awesome. So we now have a few questions and polls about Ackman Road. These poll questions are anonymous and for us to gauge your familiarity and opinion about Ackman Road. So how familiar are you with Ackman Road on a scale of not at all familiar to very familiar? Give it a few more seconds. Looks like we have a very familiar audience, which is great. Wonderful. We'll move on to the next poll. What are you most interested in being improved along Ackman Road? Safer space to bike, safer space to walk, safer crossings, intersections, or perhaps other? Great, I'll give it a few more seconds. Great, it seems like our most popular safer crossings and intersections, and we're definitely going to talk about all of these this evening. How comfortable do you feel driving through roundabouts on a scale of not comfortable at all to very comfortable? Give it a few more seconds. Looks like our audience is pretty familiar and comfortable. Now, how comfortable do you feel walking and biking through roundabouts? Not at all comfortable to very comfortable. Give it a few more seconds. And it looks like folks are not as comfortable walking and biking through roundabouts as they may be driving through roundabouts. We're going to move on to our last poll question for now. Do you feel like speeding on Ackman Road is a concern? Speeding is a major concern, speeding is a minor concern, speeding is a concern only in some locations, or speeding is not a concern? I'll give it a few more seconds. It looks like speeding is a major concern is a topic and response for most people. Great, thank you everyone. So that is our final section. This is our final question for this section. Please keep this Menti poll open as we'll be returning to it throughout our virtual meeting.
Thank you, Catherine. Hello, I am Sammy Dietrich, the project manager for the Ackman Road Feasibility Study at the McHenry County Division of Transportation. I will be facilitating the question and answer sessions this evening. There will be 3 topic-specific sessions with Q&A after each, and then an open discussion with Q&A to close the public meeting. Questions can be submitted through the meeting throughout our Q&A box. The chat box will not be used tonight for questions. We encourage participants to submit questions through the Q&A box throughout the evening. If we do not answer your question tonight, all comments will be addressed on our project webpage following the October 23rd closing of the comment period. The first specific will be bicycle and pedestrian accommodations. I will turn it over to Stacy now to share her screen and to discuss the different bicycle and pedestrian accommodations that could be used along Ackman Road. Stacy, thank you.
Thanks, Sammy. Hi, everyone. My name is Stacy Meekins. I am with Sam Schwartz Consulting. We are working with Transsystems on this effort. Can everybody see my screen? I believe.
Yes.
Great, thanks. So Ryan and I are going to go through the bicycle and pedestrian accommodations that will be explored on the Ackman Road corridor study. So first, for context, I'm going to start with a brief history lesson. So some of you may remember several years ago, the county undertook a pedestrian and bicycle master plan. And Ackman Road, as you can see by the marker here, is one of the streets identified for a bike facility. This would tie into a future planned trail along Lakewood Road that is currently being studied in phase 1, and a future planned trail along Randall Road. So here we are today along Ackman Road, and as you saw and heard in the pre-recorded presentation earlier, there's kind of a mix of sidewalks and side paths along Ackman Road. But there's not a connected facility all the way along the corridor. And it also lacks connections to the nearby destinations that Ryan pointed out. There are lots of recreational destinations here, lots of parks, several schools in the area as well. So we'll be looking at the best way to provide a comfortable and consistent network of facilities. That will include the primary facility along Ackman, as well as the best locations and designs for crossings. So just to provide a little bit of continuity and give you some background too, earlier in this project, we did a survey asking people about their travel behaviors along Ackman and just trying to learn more about the current conditions and what people hope to see along Ackman. So as you can see, a majority of people said that the lack of sidewalks make it difficult for walking, lack of bike facilities, 68% said it makes it difficult for biking, and even more, 71% said the lack of safe crossings makes it difficult. But despite that, there are still quite a few people walking and biking along Ackman on a regular basis for their daily needs, such as going to work, school, or running errands, and even more who use it for recreation and exercise. So over the next few slides, I'm going to spend some time talking about different crossing configurations that we'll be looking at and just giving you an overview of what they are and the advantages and disadvantages of each. So first we have a marked crosswalk at grade with no additional devices. The advantages here are that it really requires little to no additional right-of-way to mark a crosswalk. They have very little maintenance required and are low cost, which makes them easy to implement and quick to implement. Some of the challenges are that they do impede the flow of pedestrians and bicyclists, making them pause or stop for vehicular traffic. And it doesn't provide full separation between people walking and biking and motor vehicle traffic. And while state law does require drivers to stop for pedestrians and bicyclists in a crosswalk, the compliance is not very high in many areas. So it is kind of, the onus is then put on the bicyclist or pedestrian to stop and wait for a gap in traffic. And that makes this the least safe of all the options. But a marked crosswalk can be an appropriate facility where traffic speeds and traffic volumes are low enough that it's easy to find a gap in traffic and you don't feel at danger in crossing the street. The next crossing basically adds a rectangular rapid flash beacon to a marked crosswalk, such as this example here shown at Amberwood Drive. The advantages are similar to the marked crosswalk in that it really requires no extra space, relatively low cost, and low maintenance. And this device does increase compliance of drivers stopping for pedestrians and bicyclists. It does still, though, on the disadvantages side, does still often interrupt the flow of the person walking or biking and doesn't provide that full separation from motor vehicle traffic, as these grade separated options do. So this first one shows an underpass here at the Prairie Trail under US 14 in Crystal Lake. The advantages are obviously that you are providing full separation between motor vehicle traffic and the bicycle and pedestrian movements, providing bikes and pedestrians uninterrupted flow. When comparing an underpass to an overpass, for bicyclists in particular, the underpass allows you to gain momentum on the downslope before having to climb back up on the other side, so a little bit less strenuous. The challenges of an underpass, some of them are similar to an overpass, but some differ, and the different ones being that you have additional security and cleanliness challenges with an underpass. Those may be real or they may be perceived, but even the perceived ones are challenging for people using them. And they do require a substantial amount of space and right-of-way, and obviously a much higher cost as compared to an at-grade crossing. So similarly, I'm sure you're all familiar with an overpass as well, such as the one shown here, Prairie Trail over Ackman Road in Crystal Lake. Again, similar advantages and disadvantages to an underpass. You do provide that full separation. On the disadvantages side, it does take up more space, and it actually creates a significant detour and is more strenuous for people to get up and over the road. And with that comes a risk that people may not use it and instead just choose to cross at grade anyway. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan, and he's going to go over a few more things on the bicycle and pedestrian accommodations.
Excellent, thanks, Stacy. So the diagram displayed on the screen here shows the bicycle network with the bicycle level of service, or BLOS, ratings for Ackman Road and adjacent roads throughout the corridor. So the bicycle level of service shows a level of comfort on a roadway for an average cyclist based on the infrastructure present, posted speeds, driver behavior, and the width of the roadway. So a roadway in light or dark green indicates that a roadway that is more comfortable for cyclists, and a roadway marked in light or dark red indicates a less comfortable roadway for cyclists, and yellow indicates a neutral comfort level. So as you can see, Ackman Road is primarily yellow or red, indicating less than ideal comfort for cyclists. Our staff will utilize this rating system when considering design treatments for the corridor. The blue dots on the map display points of interest, including parks, recreational facilities, and schools. And then the purple lines zigzagging throughout the map are bicycle paths and trails within the project limits. As Stacy mentioned, there are lots of segments of trails and paths along the corridor, but we hope to increase the connectivity between these segments to make it more bike friendly. So my next slide shows the public transportation network along and near Ackman Road. Cyclists and pedestrian connections aren't the only sustainable transportation options available throughout the corridor. Pace Bus offers a fixed route, Route 550, along Randall Road on the eastern portion of the Ackman Road corridor. The route travels north and south between Crystal Lake and Elgin, using Randall Road as its main thoroughfare. The second public transportation option available is the MC Ride, Dial-A-Ride, and paratransit service. The yellow polygon on the map displays MC Ride's coverage area for the general public, and the beige polygon displays the coverage area for seniors and individuals with disabilities for the MC Ride program. There are no metro stations in the immediate area of the project. Our staff plans to take all forms of transportation into consideration when planning for the Ackman Road corridor to ensure access for all users. And now I'm going to once again turn it over to Catherine, who will be conducting more polling based on the information you just heard from Stacy and myself.
Great, thanks. All right, everyone, it's Catherine again, your polling person. And before our Q&A for this session, we have a few bike and ped related questions for you all. So let's go back to our Menti poll. If you do not have it open, you can go to menti.com and type in the numbers at the top of the page, 948735. If you are at our poll already, and I see several of you are, please click the heart on the screen. If you're on the computer, it'll be in the bottom right-hand corner. If you're on the phone, it will be in the center. Give it a few more seconds for people to log back on, and then we'll get started. All right, let's get started. Where should space for bicycle and pedestrians be provided? Off-street shared use paths, separate shared use path and sidewalk, or perhaps no preference? Answers are coming in. Give it a few more seconds. Great. It looks like a good number of people are really interested in off-street shared use paths, followed by separate shared use path and sidewalk. On to our next question. Are on-street bicycle accommodations important to you? Yes or no? Great, the answers are coming in quick. Give it a few more seconds. Great, thank you. On to our next question. What side of Ackman Road would you prefer to see an off-street shared use path? On the north side of Ackman Road, on the south side of Ackman Road, or on both sides of Ackman Road? Give it a few more seconds. Great, it looks like our audience tonight has a lot of interest in the south side of Ackman Road. What type of crossing would you prefer to use while crossing Ackman Road? So as Stacy and Ryan mentioned, a mid-block crossing with a flashing beacon, an underpass, or an overpass? Give it a few more seconds. Looks like mid-block crossing with flashing beacon is taking the lead at the moment. Great. We'll move on to our next question. On what type of trail would you feel most comfortable? An urban typical section, so that's with a curb closer to the road, or a rural typical section, so that's without a curb, further step back from the road? Give it a few more seconds. It looks like the rural typical section is more popular this evening. Thanks for all the responses. We have one more question. What else is important to you in a bike facility? This is an open-ended question, and we won't be sharing the answers on the slide tonight. So this is the final question for this section. Please keep your Menti poll available as we'll be returning to it soon. And if you're not done with this last open-ended question, I will keep it open for a little bit longer. Great, now I'm going to pass it over to Sammy for our Q&A.
Excellent. I think Sammy might be having some connection issues, so I will take over the Q&A for the bicycle and pedestrian portion. We did receive some questions prior to the meeting about bicycle and pedestrian accommodations along the Ackman Road corridor. The first being, how will the county decide what type of accommodation, multi-use path, sidewalk, or bike path only is appropriate to implement? Very good question. There's a lot of variables that go into the decision-making process for determining which accommodations to select for a roadway. In particular, our staffing consultants will analyze the amount of right-of-way needed for each design, the cost, the predicted usage of the sidewalk or multi-use path, whether it's predominantly going to be used by cyclists or pedestrians, and the public input from meetings like this to determine the ideal accommodations. Our goal is always to select the accommodation that provides the most amount of safety and utility for our residents, while staying within reason financially and creating minimal impact to our nearby residents and business owners as well. The second question that we received is, when will the location of the sidewalk or multi-use path be determined, and which gaps will be filled in and which will not? How will the decision be made between an urban versus rural cross-section? So the location of the sidewalk and or multi-use path will be determined during the first and second engineering phase of the project. Currently, we are in the feasibility phase, which comes before the two engineering phases. So we will use the input gathered during this phase to help determine which infrastructure to implement for the corridor. And then speaking to the urban versus the rural cross-section, that decision, very much like the first question, is, a lot of variables go into that decision. But, based on information we find during our engineering phase, we'll use that to kind of pick the ideal accommodations. The third question we received was, if a resident is concerned about potential impacts to their property, what should they do? For that, please, if you do have that concern, please submit an online comment detailing your concern on the Ackman Road project page, or send us an email at mcdot@mchenrycountyil.gov. All of the comments received before October 23rd will be included in the final feasibility study report. And the last question we received is, will a lack in neighborhood connectivity be considered when determining locations of multi-use paths? And yes, the answer is yes to that question. Accommodating cyclists and pedestrians is one of our main goals of the project. Ackman Road has some existing pedestrian accommodations, but obviously, like we've touched on both in the bicycle and pedestrian section and in our pre-recorded video, there are a lot of gaps that still exist and that actually separate neighborhoods, residential areas from academic institutions as well. So not only do we want to enable active transportation along Ackman Road, but this project will look to improve access across Ackman Road for those on foot or on bike.
Ryan, thank you for taking over those questions. We have not had any specific questions come in live in regards to bike and pedestrian facilities. So we will move along into the next session, which will discuss the design options for intersections. Matt from Trans Systems will take over that session and discuss that further. As the questions are coming in, we will answer them in the open discussion unless they are relevant to the discussion we are currently in. So Matt, thank you.
Thanks, Sammy. So my name is Matt Baldwin. I work for Trans Systems, and we're the lead engineering consultant on this project. And this evening, we're going to give an overview on the intersection alternative analysis for the Ackman Road corridor. And really with any corridor or feasibility study such as this, it's important to complete an operation and safety analysis of the intersections within that corridor. So for the existing Ackman Road corridor, we have a mix of stop-controlled and signalized intersections. In addition to these two types of traffic control, we have evaluated the potential implementation of roundabouts at several locations. We're going to discuss that tonight. So roundabouts continue to become more and more popular throughout Northern Illinois. However, other Midwestern states have embraced them a little more quickly than Illinois. And you might have seen them in Indiana, Wisconsin, or Iowa during your travels. And so the reason being is that roundabouts offer operational and safety benefits when installed at proper locations. And that term proper locations is really important when you understand the process, and roundabouts don't necessarily make sense at every location. So we're going to talk about those and signals tonight. During this part of our presentation, we'll provide an overview of traffic signals and roundabouts and how they operate, some benefits and challenges, and then follow up with an overview of locations where stop signs, traffic signals, and roundabouts are being considered along the corridor. On this slide, we're presenting some of the advantages and challenges for both signals and roundabouts, and these were discussed during the pre-recorded presentation. So I'm not going to cover these again, but it's important to notice too that a part of this analysis, the objective is to evaluate several different alternatives, but not to select a solution at this time. Let's see. There we go. So it's important to understand what is a traffic signal warrant when we're talking about these intersections, because a lot of them are under stop sign control, and we're evaluating a lot of different alternatives and options at each one of these locations. So the traffic signal warrant evaluates the needs for a traffic signal at a specific location for both the existing and design years. So the design year is 2050 in this instance, to determine if traffic signals are warranted based on industry standard metrics, which is FHWA. So locations with traffic signals already meet warrants, so we're focused on stop controlled intersections along this corridor. And so there's a variety of ways to determine if signals are warranted. So those are traffic volumes, pedestrian volumes, crash history, and operations. And the warrants are listed on the screen here for you to see. Locations that meet traffic signal warrants along the corridor were evaluated for both signals and roundabouts, measuring performance based on projected traffic volumes. And then if signal warrants were not met based on the proposed volumes, we evaluated stop signs versus roundabouts as possible alternatives. We'll discuss some of our observations from that preliminary analysis throughout this presentation. So roundabouts, how do they work? And roundabouts, it seems like everyone that's attending the presentation has a strong understanding of how roundabouts work, and they're a strong level of comfort based on the input from the Mentee polling questions, but we'll just give a quick overview on some of the distinguishing features and then the operations as part of this slide. And so the first thing we're going to point out is the circulating lane, which is the lane that traffic operates in. And that's typically 16 to 20 feet wide, and it's dependent on what types of design vehicles and location and design speeds. And that's all figured out during the design portion of the project. The next feature we're going to look at is the truck apron, which is this feature right here. And that's to allow for larger vehicles to navigate through the roundabout. Typically, that's a 4-inch mountable curb. And most vehicles that travel through the roundabout do not actually touch the truck apron. This is more for large 18-wheel vehicles, farm implementation, a large emergency response vehicles if necessary. The next distinguishing item that we're going to look at is the splitter island, and that's this feature right here. And so that helps slow people down and get them going in the right direction. A lot of times you might see a curve through this section. It's also landscaped and also provides a refuge point for pedestrians to stand, so they only have to cross one direction of traffic at a time. And then where there's also several pedestrian accommodations that we'll look at here. You can see here, this allows for a bike turnoff, that if bicyclists are not comfortable with going through the circulating lane, they can get off and walk their bikes along these sidewalks and then cross at whatever crossing is appropriate. But I should also mention that bicyclists are allowed to navigate through the circulating lane if they're comfortable. And then there's also landscape features. And so the central island is often landscaped with medium height bush and shrubbery to help operations of the roundabout. It avoids people from seeing opposing traffic all the way on the other side of the roundabout, and to help people from yielding unnecessarily. And so down here and on the side, we talk about what happens as you operate through a roundabout. As you approach, you yield and you slow down. Typically between 15 and 25 miles an hour is what the roundabout's designed for. And you're looking for traffic that comes from your left, because the traffic goes through the circulating lane in counterclockwise fashion. When there's an opening or a gap, that vehicle can enter into the roundabout and either make a right turn, a through movement, or a left turn movement, or even a full U-turn movement if necessary. As they enter, we yield to pedestrians at the crosswalks here. And also when we exit, if there's pedestrian facilities on any of the legs, we would yield to the pedestrians at those locations as well. And so there's a lot of talk about safety benefits of roundabouts, and it was mentioned during the video today that there's approximately a 90% reduction in fatalities based on the studies to this point on roundabouts, 76% reduction in injuries, and 35% reduction in all crashes. It's also generally safer for pedestrians due to the reduced speeds, the presence of the refuge islands that we just pointed out, and the elimination of left turn conflicts with pedestrian crossings. When we talk about left turn movements for pedestrians, that's what's shown on this graphic here, where a vehicle would be making a left turn and the conflict with pedestrians on the adjacent crosswalk of that left turn. And then also we talked about how there's a reduction in conflict points. And so we're showing all the movements of vehicular traffic on this slide, and how there's 32 interaction points, and that's reduced to 8 points on the left slide for a roundabout. Down here's the pedestrian conflict points. It's 16 points with vehicular and pedestrians interacting on the right for a standard traffic signal intersection, and it's only 8 on the left. And so that's one of the big reasons there's a significant safety benefit realized with roundabouts versus signalized intersections. So one of the things that is critical to getting a roundabout correct is the signage and pavement marking. And it's really important for safe and efficient operations of the roundabout. Roundabouts do require some adjustment time because they do operate different from a traffic signal. And so here on the right, we're showing some pavement markings and signage that you would see at a typical roundabout. In advance of the roundabout, there's the roundabout sign that indicates that they should be operating and slowing down speeds. There are signs that indicate where the crosswalks are and yielding location, where a vehicle would yield to traffic operating in the circulating lane. And there's also some advanced signage, which indicates, based on where you're looking to go in the adjacent side streets or minor streets, what maneuver you would make through the roundabout in order to get to your destination. And so roundabouts are often referred to as a greener alternative. And a couple of reasons for that are it reduces emissions by limiting idle time, as you would see at a traffic signal. They're quieter because they reduce hard braking at the intersections because of the slowing down the vehicles as they approach the intersections and yielding to the other traffic. There's landscape medians and islands, which add a green component. And on the side here, we're showing an example in Lake County, which is called Cedar Lake Road at Monteville Road intersection, which points out the green features and some of the different treatments for these median islands. So you can put brick pavers and different designs through this location. And then you can also plant median landscape treatments throughout this section at a roundabout to give it that nice aesthetic feature. And so with the intersection costs, and that's a big concern, and was also mentioned during the presentation, that really with roundabouts, there's typically a higher upfront cost because of right-of-way and there's a bigger pavement area at the intersection itself. But there's a reduced operations and maintenance cost. So overall, when compared to a traffic signal, typically a lower cost for the lifespan of the intersection. But once again, that's a critical consideration during planning efforts in terms of that upfront cost to make sure that it's a viable option at the location. And so for public opinion on roundabouts, it seems like everyone or most of the people in attendance today are comfortable with operating roundabouts. That's not always the case. It depends on the location and how many roundabouts might be in the area. And so this is a graph showing the typical public feedback as it relates to roundabouts early on. Typically, the response or input is that people are skeptical of the benefits of roundabouts. And as you can see on this table, this shows that very negative percentage is in that 20 to 25% range, and negative is almost half of the people polled, and where only a few people have a positive opinion. But after the construction of the roundabouts, it shifts, whereas while some people are still neutral, many people are positive and very positive in terms of the operations of roundabouts. So, as was mentioned during the video by Scott, there are 7 roundabouts constructed in the county right now, and those are indicated with the blue dots on the map. And there's 8 additional locations where roundabouts are being considered or will be built soon. And so our project location is shown right here on the map, which is in between where some of the roundabouts are being proposed and where some of the existing locations are. And so that might be why those of you in attendance today have a familiarity with roundabouts and have a certain comfort level when compared to some other locations. And so as part of this project, where are we considering roundabouts throughout this corridor? There's 7 locations that we've identified based on the traffic signal warrants or the stop sign warrants that we're considering roundabouts, and those locations are listed here. And in several of these locations, we're considering both traffic signals and roundabouts. And so this feasibility analysis will go through and has identified some of the benefits or challenges of each based on each location. And we're looking to gather additional public feedback and input on roundabouts and signals during this feasibility study so that we can take some of that input and determine what a preferred alternative is during the phase 1 traffic or engineering study. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Catherine, and she's going to be doing a lot of the polling. And based on the way my screen's operating, it looks like there's several questions that are popping up. So can't wait to hear your question. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Matt. Before our intersection Q&A, we have a few intersection related polls. So we're going to go back to our Menti poll. If you do not have it open, you can go to menti.com and type in the numbers at the top of the page. Those are 948735. And if you're at our poll already, which I see so far at least 20 of you are, press the heart in the bottom right-hand corner if you're at your computer, or in the center of your screen if you are on your phone. So we'll give it a few more seconds for people to log on, and then we'll get started with our polling intersection related questions. All right, we'll get started. So have you traveled through a roundabout before? Your answers are coming in quick, and seems like everyone is a yes. So that is great with familiarity. So in the beginning of our meeting, we asked questions about your comfort level about roundabouts. So we're intentionally asking these again. So how comfortable do you feel driving through roundabouts on a scale of not comfortable at all to very comfortable? Give it a few more seconds. Great. And similar from before, how comfortable do you feel walking and biking through roundabouts? Give it a few more seconds. And while not as comfortable driving through roundabouts, it looks like folks might be a little bit more comfortable than before. We're going to move on to our next polling question. What do you think about adding traffic signals to an intersection? Signals should be used at all intersections along Ackman Road. Signals should be added in select locations along Ackman Road. Signals should not be added anywhere along Ackman Road. Give it a few more seconds. So far, it looks like the majority of folks online are interested in signals being added in select locations. We're going to move on to our next question. Which intersections do you think are most appropriate for roundabouts? Haligus Road, Lakewood Road, Red Tail Drive, Swanson Road, Huntley Road, Golf Course Road, Westport Ridge, or none? We'll give it a few more seconds. So far, the responses are spread fairly evenly, with most interest in Red Tail, Swanson, and Huntley. Great, thank you for your feedback. Which intersections do you think are most appropriate for a traffic signal? So we're looking at the same intersections on Haligus Road, Lakewood Road, Red Tail Drive, Swanson Road, Huntley Road, Golf Course Road, Westport Ridge, or none. Give it a few more seconds. So far, it looks like Golf Course Road is really standing out right now. Great. We're going to move on to our last question for this section. Which type of intersection design do you feel reduces traffic speed the most? Roundabout, a traffic signal, stop signs, or perhaps no control? Give it a few more seconds. Great, so this is our final question for this section. Please keep your Menti poll available as we'll be returning to it soon.
Great, Catherine. Thank you for that. Once again, I'm Sammy Dietrich, the project manager for the Ackman Road Feasibility Study at McHenry County. I will be facilitating, hopefully this evening, the question and answer sessions. As a reminder, I think most of you have found the Q&A as we are having a lot of questions come in, so that's great. If you cannot find it, hover over your screen. There should be a box that comes up that says Q&A. Click on it, submit your question, and we will get to that later in the evening. So to start off now, we had a couple of questions come in earlier about roundabouts and traffic signals. So I'm going to have Matt answer those now, and then I'll get to the live questions that have come in. So Matt, the first question is, what is the recommended distance between roundabouts to achieve optimum traffic flow?
Sure, the spacing of roundabouts is usually dependent on the 95th percentile queue, which ensures that traffic won't back up into one roundabout and then impede the flow of the traffic on the circulating roadway into the next roundabout.
Great, thank you. A follow-up question to that came in was, what is the recommended distance between traffic signals to achieve optimum traffic flow?
Sure, so McHenry County DOT currently follows the design guidance from the FHWA, which states that spacing between the signalized intersections should range from 1/4 to 1/2 mile So signal spacing less than 1,000 feet should be avoided as it's difficult to coordinate the signals to platoon traffic flow along the major road. And then also signal space less than 500 feet apart provide few operational benefits to the side streets.
Thank you very much. A question that came in tonight was, what is the typical diameter of a multi-lane roundabout? Could you expand on that?
Sure. So the diameters of roundabouts change depending on the location and the impacts and are determined during the study process. And so for single lane roundabouts, a lot of times what we see is that they range from 120 feet to 150 feet in diameter. And then for dual lane roundabouts, a lot of times what we see is in the range of 150 to 200 feet. And that's just operational dependent. And then also we can do certain things such as offset those roundabouts to avoid or mitigate impacts as well.
Okay, I'm not sure if you can answer this or if you want to throw it to somebody else, but have there been any considerations for adding a right turn lane from Ackman Road to Golf Course heading north and a right turn lane from Ackman Road to Golf Course Road heading south?
Sure, I am going to pass that to Jesse. I think he can expand on that question and answer it thoroughly.
Thanks, Matt. Yes, a little bit hard to see, obviously, in some of the exhibit material, but in the case of northbound golf course, so if you're on the south leg heading towards Ackman, a right turn lane is proposed just due to the heavy movements there. As far as the other direction, I believe it was the eastbound direction, so as you're heading towards Randall Road. Unfortunately, that movement did not meet what we would typically look at from a volume perspective. So there is no right turn lane at this time anyways proposed for that leg.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. I saw a question come in that has concerns about roundabouts and high school drivers. The number of high school drivers that go through the intersection of Golf Course Road and Ackman Road. Matt, can you give a little bit about how high schoolers have responded to roundabouts in other areas?
Sure. I think the nice thing about roundabouts, especially from an operations standpoint, is that they slow everyone down. So a lot of times people are worried about traffic signals, and especially in locations where there's speeding concerns, how do we slow traffic down? And I think roundabouts are one of the most effective tools in our toolbox to implement to slow down traffic in general and reduce those high impact type crashes and reduce injuries through a corridor such as this. So also in terms of operations, it's all about education. I think if it's determined during the phase 1 process that roundabouts are the preferred alternative at any of these intersection locations, there's going to be a big outreach as part of that phase 1 process to continue this education and make sure that anyone that's going to be using this has an opportunity to understand what the operations are and cover a lot of the information that we covered today, Sammy.
Great, thank you. With that question, we did have more questions that came in, but they involve Red Tail and Swanson, so I want to hold off on those until the next session. So I'm going to turn it over now to Scott to begin the next section, which is on the Huntley Road, Swanson Road, Red Tail Drive intersection. Sorry, I'll actually be turning it over to Jesse, not Scott. They'll begin that discussion briefly, and then we'll cover the questions that we didn't get to during this session. So Jesse, if you're ready, thank you.
Yep, we're ready. You just didn't want to pronounce my last name, Sammy, so that's fine.
I did not.
Yes, so thank you, Sammy. Sammy noted, my name is Jesse Vorma. I also work for Trans Systems, and again, who was the consultant hired to assist the county with this feasibility study. So you may be asking, why did we pick segment 2? If you recall, back in May of last year, we had an initial public meeting to generate some input from the public stakeholders around what some of the improvements they'd like to see, what are the issues that exist out there currently, and over 75% of the comments that we received at that meeting, which were specific to an improvement along Ackman, and that could have been anywhere, all the way from Haligus to Randall, were specifically within this segment, so either at Redtail, Swanson, or Huntley. And because of that, we felt it obviously deserved a little bit more time maybe than any of the other intersections or segments, not to belittle those or say they're not important as well. But it was very obvious that there was a lot of interest in this segment of Ackman Road and the county, you know, undertaking some improvements at any one of these 3 intersections. So just to briefly kind of walk through what's out there today, and I'll kind of orientate everybody so we're all looking in the same direction. North is going to be up on the screen. You can see the golf course, Redtail over in the upper left-hand corner. Everybody's well aware where Lou Malnati's is at. And then we've got Redtail, Swanson, and Huntley. Some of the existing conditions that reside out there are obviously there are undefined or no shoulders, very poor pavement condition, along with poor drainage or a lack of positive drainage. And then, as was noted in the pre-recorded presentation, kind of common at various intersections along the entire corridor, just tight turning maneuvers at some of these intersections. From a pedestrian perspective, there's obviously a lack of accommodations, as there are no either bike or pedestrian accommodations along the corridor. And I apologize for that, as I thought I clicked that button. Again, just to orientate everybody here really quickly, we've got Lou Malnati's right here. We've got the golf course, Redtail, which everyone's very familiar with, up in the upper left-hand corner. And then we've got Huntley, Swanson, and Redtail. Again, some of the issues that are out there, again, are related to the roadway itself. We kind of just walked through. And then again, the pedestrian facilities, non-existent. As you can see in the aerial, there are no bike paths or sidewalks in this segment, as well as no crosswalks either. From an operation perspective, all of these intersections are unsignalized. So you've got the stop signs along the side streets with free flow traffic along Ackman Road. And what does that mean from an operation perspective? Well, obviously some of you may have experienced it out there, but in the case of those vehicles that are likely turning onto Ackman, and mostly those that are turning left, you've likely experienced some very long wait times, and in some instances may require a vehicle who's turning left onto either Swanson, Redtail, or Huntley to kind of wait and let you out to make your movement. There's also a lack of turn lanes along Ackman itself, you know, left turn lanes or right turn lanes. However, they do exist currently at Huntley. And then again, as is the case with safety, the tight turning maneuvers also put a hamper on the traffic operations. There we go. From an environmental resource perspective, some of the both human and natural resources that exist out there are, you've got Kishwaukee Creek, which runs north-south through the corridor between Redtail and Swanson Road. We also have Willow Edge Park in the northeast corner of the Huntley Road intersection. And then along the corridor is predominantly residential. You have subdivisions over towards the west along the south side of Ackman. Got some single family residences along the south side of Ackman between Swanson and Huntley, as well as along the north side between Redtail and Huntley. You saw this slide in the pre-recorded presentation as well, but based upon, again, the feedback that we received at the first meeting, Some of the analysis that we completed, which included traffic analysis, safety analysis as well, we identified 5 options that the county should consider when looking at improvements along the Ackman Road corridor, specifically again in here in segment 2. So the first option, we'll get there, is maintaining the stop control along the side streets. However, this option adds channelization along not only Ackman Road, but also along the side streets. So we'll take a little bit closer look at what each of those intersections may look like. So here specifically at Redtail, what I want to first point out here is in the green shapes, those are what could be potential landscape medians. And at the intersection itself, what's in gray, those would be potential pedestrian refuge islands. And again, all of this stuff is conceptual and potential. So when it moves into future phases, just want to point out, things may change or it could look slightly different. In particular, we would have left turn lanes on all 3 legs of the intersection, as well as right turn lanes for traffic heading westbound along Ackman, as well as traffic heading southbound on Redtail. At Swanson Road, again, very similar to Redtail. You got the same landscape medians and pedestrian refuge islands, which are consistent for all of the options that are options 1, which again is the unsignalized, but in future options as well. And then you've got left turn lanes on all 3 legs, and again, right turn lanes here in this case, particularly in the eastbound direction, and then also along Swanson Road as well. Lastly, at Huntley Road, again, you've got the landscape medians and the pedestrian refuge islands. And from a lane configuration perspective, Huntley Road does have left and right turn lanes today. So really the only difference here would be a left turn lane along the east leg of the intersection. Option 2 kind of builds upon option 1 and takes the geometric concepts that we just reviewed at the intersections, and rather than maintain the one-way stops along the side streets, would look to add a traffic signal at each of the intersections. So again, just to give you a quick picture of what that may look like, again, very similar to those options, or the intersections we just reviewed in option 1, again, other than for the fact that there is the addition of a traffic signal. Option 3, rather than installing a traffic signal, constructs a roundabout. And what is that going to look like? So some of the features here, and just to quickly kind of point them out, the green shapes, as Matt had discussed in his earlier presentation, would be landscaped. Again, that could be any sort of landscaping treatments, small plantings, sod, things of that nature. And what's depicted here in kind of like the burnt orange, I'll call it, color, would be, again, the truck apron within the circulatory or around the inner circle, as well as kind of the medians leading up to the circulatory roadway. Again, that could be stamped concrete, brick pavers, what I would term kind of a hard median. From a geometric concept perspective, this is what we would term a standard single lane roundabout, where there's one lane leading into the roundabout, one lane circulating around the roundabout, and then also one lane exiting the roundabout as well. At Swanson, very similar to Redtail as well here, where we've got our standard single lane roundabout. And then over at Huntley, what you can see here is maybe a little bit different take on that single lane roundabout, where in particular for traffic heading in the eastbound direction, we have 2 lanes in the leading into the roundabout 2 lanes circulating around the roundabout, and 2 lanes leaving the roundabout. I apologize for some of the delay on my cursor. For some reason, there's a significant delay. In particular, with the 2 lanes leading into the roundabout for traffic heading eastbound towards Randall or Golf Course, the outermost lane would only be allowed to continue east, while the innermost lane would have the opportunity to not only continue east towards Golf Course, but also to enter the circulatory roadway and continue either north along Huntley, or if need be, to make a U-turn to head back west along Ackman Road. In particular, for westbound traffic and Huntley itself, we do have what was referred to in the pre-recorded presentation as bypass right turn lanes. And again, the reason for those are really based upon the traffic volumes and trying to make the roundabout operate as best as possible. Option 4 takes a look at realigning Swanson Road with Redtail, as you can kind of see here with the geometrics. So let's look at what kind of change that has on the intersection with Redtail. Looks a little bit similar to, again, option 2. However, we do have the 4th leg of the intersection here, and we've got left turn lanes on all 4 legs. The difference here is now, rather than having just a right turn lane and a left turn lane along the north leg of Redtail, what used to be just the right turn lane now becomes a shared through and right. So vehicles in that lane would have the opportunity to turn west onto Ackman or to continue south along Swanson. As far as the impacts or changes to Huntley, the important thing to note here is it really has none. Realigning Swanson to move that intersection or eliminate that intersection and move that traffic further away from Huntley doesn't have any bearing on the operations at this intersection. So option 4 is going to look exactly the same as option 2, with the left turn lanes on each leg of the intersection, as well as the right turn lanes for westbound and along Huntley Road as well. Option 5 is the same realignment as option 4. However, rather than installing the traffic signals, we'd be constructing roundabouts. So again, a little similar to option 3, which was, again, roundabouts without the realignment. However, the difference here being we've got, similar to Huntley, 2 lanes in that westbound direction. So again, traffic that would be in the outermost lane heading west towards Redtail Swanson. If you're in that outer lane again, you would only have the opportunity to continue west or to turn right to head north on Redtail. If you were in that innermost lane, you would have the opportunity to continue west on Ackman towards Lakewood, or to continue south, to basically turn left and continue south along Swanson. And similar to option 4, again, the realignment of Swanson with Redtail has no bearing or change on the roundabout concept. So exactly the same as option 3. So now we're just going to take a few more minutes to explain a little bit further the evaluation matrix, which was briefly discussed in the pre-recorded presentation. And just so everybody's looking at the same thing. On the left-hand side, kind of in the white, are the various options we considered, as well as the intersections we took a look at, and then what was the intersection traffic control. Again, those being maintaining the stop control on the side streets, adding a traffic signal, or constructing a roundabout. The meat of the evaluation matrix is, again, taking a look at each of the impacts or benefits of those options on the project goals, which were safety and mobility, and the environmental impacts, which took a look at the human environment and natural environment, and then also just the relative cost. So when specifically looking at safety, as was mentioned in the pre-recorded presentation, the roundabouts fare a little bit better than the traffic signals. However, both of them are an improvement on the existing and no build conditions. Why again do the roundabouts get a little bit better rating than the traffic signals? Mainly due to a function of the slower speeds that are encountered, which make the crossing safer for pedestrians, result in less high impact collisions, and typically result in fewer collisions due to, as Matt had noted in his presentation, those fewer potential conflict points. From a mobility perspective, we took a look at it again. What does it do to the level of service and delay for the overall intersection? But then also, how about for the worst, or what we call the most critical movement? Again, what is the movement at that intersection which experiences the longest delay, worst level of service, longest wait time to continue through the intersection? So if we look at the overall intersection, again, let's focus on the letter grades here initially. Again, we're just trying to get a measure for the level of service, which again, if we want to break it into simplistic terms, on a whole, what is the wait period for traffic at that intersection? Obviously, A and B's being the best, C's and D's being okay, F's being something we want to try to avoid. As you can see, with any one of the 5 options we reviewed, most of them improve the level of service to an acceptable level, again, being an A, B, or C, except for maintaining the one-way stop control at Swanson, which would still operate at a level of service F. Specifically looking at the delay in seconds, again, very similar, the roundabouts and traffic signals operate generally within the range of 10 to 15 seconds, again, on an overall intersection perspective, which is very well compared to most intersections, and would be something that any intersection would be happy to see. From a critical movement perspective, we wanted to, again, identify, well, while the overall intersection may operate very well, what does it truly mean for those with the longest wait period? As you can see, both in the existing and future no-build, do-nothing conditions, a lot of these are going to operate at either a level of service D or F. And then even with option 1, a lot of them, again, operate in that level of service F with some very significant wait periods. Why is that? Again, with option 1, that's mainly due to the function that the most critical movement are those vehicles waiting to turn left onto Ackman. Without a traffic signal, there's not really a mechanism for them to be able to quickly enter onto Ackman. And again, they still would be forced to kind of wait for those gaps, wait for traffic to kind of stop, and maybe wait to let them out. So that's where options 2 and 5 really shine compared to option 1. While not at a level of service A or B, they do operate at acceptable levels, again, in that C to D range. And I do want to point out that with regards to the traffic signals versus roundabouts, and we'll just look at option 2 and 3, while there's not a big difference in the letter grades, you can see that the delay, or again, the wait period for those vehicles, while upwards of 40 to 50 seconds for option 2, they are down near 20 seconds for option 3, which again is the roundabout option. So just want to kind of give some context behind what roundabouts versus traffic signals mean from an operation perspective, and maybe where some of those subtle differences may lie. With regards to the realignment, again, not a big bearing on the level of service at the particular intersection. However, it would eliminate another intersection through that segment. From an impact perspective, as you can see, kind of the top 2 options, as well as part of option 3, they really fare best when it comes to looking at impacts to both the human environment with respect to potential property acquisition, change in travel patterns, and then also to the natural environment, which we took a look at. What does it mean from maybe a park acquisition perspective, and or what does it mean from a stormwater detention and water quality perspective? In options 4 and 5, which again are the realignment of Swanson with Redtail, because we'd be looking at constructing a new roadway along a new alignment, basically across a creek, those do have the most significant impacts out of all 5 options that we took a look at. So that's a little bit deeper look into some of the analysis that we conducted for segment 2. And now we will turn it back over to Catherine to ask a series of questions.
Great, thanks, Jesse. If you don't mind, stop sharing your screen and I'll share over the poll. All right, so it's Catherine again, and it's time for polling. Before our next Q&A, we have a few polls about Huntley, Swanson, and Redtail for you all. So we're going to go back to our Menti poll. Again, if you do not have it open, you can go to menti.com and type in the code at the top, 948735. Looks like people know the drill. When you are here, please select the heart, either at the middle of your screen or in the bottom right-hand corner. And we'll get started. All right. So our first question for you all is, which intersection option do you prefer? So Jesse just went through 5 options. Option 1 was stop signs at Huntley, Swanson, and Redtail. Option 2 was traffic signals at Huntley, Swanson, and Redtail. Option 3 was the roundabouts at Huntley, Swanson, and Redtail. Option 4 was traffic signals at the realigned Huntley, Swanson, and then at Redtail. And option 5 was roundabouts at the realigned Huntley, Swanson, and then at Redtail. I know that's a mouthful. But again, option 1 was the stop signs at Huntley, Swanson, Redtail. Option 2 is traffic signals. Option 3 is roundabouts. Option 4 is traffic signals at the realignment. And option 5 is roundabouts with the realignment. Give it a few more seconds. It looks like option 5 right now is in the lead. Great. Do you have any additional concerns or comments for Huntley, Swanson, and Redtail? This is an open-ended question, and we'll be keeping the slide private and not sharing the answers right now. So I'll give about a minute for folks to type in any additional concerns or comments about segment 2, Huntley, Swanson, and Redtail. And while folks are typing in, I just want to say thank you for all of your feedback throughout these polls. They are very helpful. I see some responses are starting to come in. We'll give it about 15 more seconds. If you're still working on your question, then you can finish it up and then skip to the next question when you're done. Great, I'm going to move along. What do you think of the realignment of Redtail? Again, this is an open-ended question, and we won't be sharing the answers on the slide. I'll give about a minute for folks to just type in what they think about the realignment of Redtail. I see some answers are starting to trickle in. Thank you, everyone. And I'll give about 15 more seconds for folks to submit any responses. And if you're not done, feel free to finish typing and then skip to the next question whenever you're ready. Great. We're going to move on to the next question. What segment should be the first focus? So segment 1 was Haligus Road to Lakewood Road. Segment 2 was Red Tail Drive to Huntley Road. And segment 3, Golf Course Road to Red Tail Road. So again, here's the image. Segment 1, segment 2, and segment 3. And it looks like there's a lot of interest in focusing first on segment 2. So this is our final question for this section. Please keep your Menti poll available as we'll be returning to it soon.
Thank you, Catherine. And now we will be beginning the Q&A session for the Red Tail, Swanson, and Huntley segment. If you're just joining us, I'm Sammy Dietrich, the project manager for the Ackman Road Feasibility Study. I will be facilitating the question and answers this evening. We had some questions submitted before the meeting, so we'll address those first, but all questions are welcome tonight. Please use the Q&A box. If you do not see it, just move your mouse over your screen and it should pop up. You can click Q&A and submit questions to us. So with that, we will start the question. The first question will be for Ben. Ben, what is the county's policy on spacing of traffic signals?
Thanks, Sammy. I'll take that question. First off, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Ben Redding, and I'm the design manager at the McHenry County Division of Transportation. Regarding the question, as Matt noted in the previous section, the county's policy is to follow the Federal Highway Administration's guidance and space our signals between 1/2 and 1/4 mile apart. Now, with that said, the county does have several existing locations within our system where they're spaced a little bit closer than that. And in addition, we still do consider new locations, such as the Ackman Road corridor, where signals could be spaced closer than that if we have an opportunity to improve capacity, operations, and safety. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ben. The next question that we had come in, I will direct towards Jesse. Are the 3 intersections discussed by you previously spaced too close to one another to provide traffic controls at each intersection?
Yes, so the distance currently for those 3 intersections is approximately 600 feet between Red Tail and Swanson, and then about a little bit less than 1/4 mile, approximately 1,200 feet between Swanson and Huntley. So obviously those are slightly less than the thresholds that the county currently uses when taking a look at traffic signals. However, with this being a feasibility study, we did want to identify, again, those improvements that would serve to meet the project goals. With those goals, again, being provide a safe and efficient intersection. In future studies, which would include a phase 1 study, some of that stuff would be further vetted out. And I think in the case of whether or not traffic signals would be the recommended alternative versus roundabouts, obviously that would play a factor when making the decision.
Great, thank you, Jesse. With the proximity of Red Tail Drive to Huntley Road, if the roadway was realigned, would it be advantageous, given the proximity of the 2 intersections, with the impacts to the area?
Yeah, with respect to the realignment, we did consider a couple different options, with those being do you realign Swanson with Redtail? Do you realign it with Huntley? Do you realign Redtail with Swanson? And I think just due to the fact that the southwest quadrant of the Swanson intersection has what currently is an undeveloped parcel, that would lead itself to likely the least impacts from a human environment perspective, where any of the other realignments would encounter more properties, more homeowners, things of that nature. So there's obviously impacts, with that option that need to be considered when making a determination amongst those 5 options that were really identified for potential improvements.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to some of the live questions that came in. For right now, I'm going to try to focus on Redtail, Swanson, and Huntley, and then we will move to the general questions. So Jesse, question came in: if a roundabout is implemented at Swanson and Ackman Road, there's a residence across. How do driveways interact with roundabouts?
Thanks, Sammy. With respect to that particular location, and just want to point out that there are a few other intersections where with the roundabout, there were driveways in close proximity. You consider it no different than any other leg of the intersection, where the driveway itself would have access to the circulatory roadway, which then would provide the homeowner the opportunity to really go any direction they want. Whether or not that's to head west along Ackman, to head south on Swanson, or to head east along Ackman Road.
Thank you, Jesse. Has there been any consideration for adding right turn lanes from Swanson Road onto Ackman Road?
Yes, for the unsignalized option, as well as the traffic signal option, right turn lanes were identified as a need at Swanson, as well as Redtail and Huntley Road, just due to the traffic volumes and the number of vehicles wanting to make that turn.
Okay, thank you. This may have been covered, but would additional turn lanes, I think this is in general, Jesse, along the Ackman Road corridor, alleviate the need for traffic signals?
As we reviewed in option 2, or segment 2, sorry, with option 1, that did take a look at providing left turn lanes and right turn lanes where needed, not only along Ackman, but also along the side streets as well. And the main drawback to that, again, as was described or discussed, albeit a bit briefly during the presentation, was while it does show an acceptable level of service for the overall intersection, I believe they were near A and B, it does not quite solve the problem for the critical movements, which again, were those vehicles trying to turn left onto Ackman from the side streets. Because there's not a traffic signal there, not a roundabout, there's really no mechanism to help alleviate that problem. So unfortunately, just simply adding turn lanes along Ackman won't really help solve the biggest issue that's out there, which is the longest wait times for the vehicles waiting to turn left onto Ackman.
Thank you, Jesse. I'm going to throw this one to Ben. He may punt it to somebody else. But if we restricted the signage at Redtail and Ackman to improve visibility of traffic that is heading eastbound on Ackman?
So we can certainly look at some opportunities to improve signage, to improve visibility as noted, and we'll go ahead and take that into consideration and see what we can come up with. Thanks.
Ben, I have another question for you. Swanson currently doesn't have a sidewalk. Would the proposed diverted Swanson Road have a sidewalk?
So the proposed diverted Swanson Road, we'd have to coordinate with our partners on that project to determine if that's something that we could provide over there on that township section of roadway. But we'd be happy to partner on that type of opportunity.
And the final question, if Swanson Road, Jesse, I think you can answer this. If Swanson Road is redirected, will the existing section become a dead-end access road for existing houses?
Yes, thanks, Sammy. If the county were to undertake the realignment, it was a little bit hard to see on the aerials concepts. I didn't really go over it, but yes, basically there would still be access to the homes that currently have driveway access off of Swanson, and there would be no longer access to Ackman directly from the old Swanson. So, you know, it would kind of be dead-ended, cul-de-sac, you know, something of that nature.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. With that question, I believe we have answered all the questions that relate directly to Ackman and Redtail, Swanson, and Huntley roads. So we will end that session and move on to our open discussion and Q&A. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the pre-submitted questions, and then we'll move to the questions that were asked live tonight. So hopefully we get to all of them. If we do not, we will provide answers to all the comments and questions that came in on our project website after the close of the comment period, which is October 23rd. So with that, the first question I have is for Scott. Scott, how is information being shared to involve all stakeholders?
Thank you, Sammy. I'm Scott Hennings, the Assistant Director of Transportation here at McHenry County DOT. The county is committed to an inclusive public participation process for this project. A year ago, we held a public meeting at Woods Creek Elementary School where we invited residents and users of Ackman Roadway to give us feedback on the project. Our project team has accomplished a lot of tasks since then, and all of their work product has been posted to the county's website for public viewing and review. The county also met with on multiple occasions with all three municipalities, Lakewood, Lake in the Hills, and Crystal Lake, to discuss the project and to get their feedback on the project as well, in addition to the Crystal Lake Park District and Grafton Township Highway Department, as Ben mentioned earlier. And then finally, this meeting today represents the latest attempt to reach a wide and diverse audience to get feedback on where we are today. So really, if you have other ideas related to sharing project information, how the county can do more to get the information out to the public, we would love to hear it. Please provide comments in the chat box or submit them to our comment form as was described before.
Okay, thank you, Scott. If a resident has a concern about impacts to their properties, what can they do or who can they reach out to?
As was mentioned before, if a resident does have concerns with property acquisition or impacts to their property, we would encourage them to submit a comment to McHenry County DOT, either using our online comment form that was described earlier in the presentation, or to email our general DOT mailbox, which is mcdot@mchenrycountyil.gov. And those comments will be included in the final feasibility study report.
Great, thank you. One more question. Why is the year 2050 referenced in the design of Ackman Road? And can you clarify why 2050 is being used? And when will Ackman Road be in the county plan for construction?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, otherwise known as CMAP, conducts population and traffic projections for all parts of the region that local agencies like McHenry County rely on to right-size our projects. CMAP's latest projections look out to the year 2050, which is why we are using that year in our analysis for this project. The year 2050 that is shown in this meeting in various presentations that we gave doesn't mean to imply that the project will be built in 2050 or that it will take that long to get to construction, only that the ultimate improvements should be able to accommodate the traffic that we expect will exist in year 2050.
There was mention of Ackman Road extending to Illinois Route 47. Is that in the county's plan?
Yeah, that's another great question. The Ackman Road extension out to Illinois 47 is included in the county's long-range transportation plan, which was conducted back in 2012. It was not a high priority project. In fact, I think it was labeled as a medium priority project. And a lot of the project was dependent on developers assisting with the future construction of that project, if and when development ever occurred west of Haligus Road. So yes, it is in our plan. And yes, this project does take that future project into account. But like I said, no engineering has been done on the Ackman Road extension to date, and it really is not a high priority for the county at this point in time.
Thank you very much. Jesse, the next question is for you. Can you explain when noise is analyzed in the design process? There is concerns from residents that back up to Ackman Road about the noise and how additional traffic will impact that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sammy. With respect to noise, it was not something that was looked at as part of the feasibility study. Again, the goal of the feasibility study was really to identify potential alternatives or options that would state the needed goals of the project, with, again, those being to improve the safety and mobility at the intersections. With respect to noise, that's typically something that would be done as part of a phase 1 study, which would include kind of monitoring or identifying existing noise levels, documenting what the levels may be with the proposed improvements, which are predicated upon a number of different factors. So if and when the county decides to move this project into phase 1, whether or not it's segment 1, 2, 3, some combination of those, noise would be something that would be considered at that time.
Thank you. Scott, the next question is for you. How will land acquisition be handled by the county?
So as Jesse mentioned earlier, this project is a feasibility study. So it's actually pre-engineering work that we're doing today to get a better feel for what the public would like to see on this project. After we complete the feasibility study, which should be completed sometime in 2021, the county will then move into what's called phase 1 engineering or preliminary engineering. Typically that process will take several years to come to fruition. And then once design approval is granted, once phase 1 is complete, then the county has the ability to go out and acquire land for the project. So really an answer to that question is we're quite a long way off from land acquisition. We still need to go through phase 1 engineering before we even get to that phase.
Great, thank you. Jesse, can you explain how and when the evaluation matrix information will be completed and available to the public?
Yeah, so the evaluation matrices for each of the segments will be part of the alternative analysis memorandum that'll be completed, which again will really be taking a look at the various options that were considered, what the impacts to the environment, both natural and human, are, as well as what the operational and safety benefits. So a lot of that you saw during today's presentation. The feasibility study recommendation report will really be what kind of caps the entire project. So, you know, when the study is complete, I believe all that information, you know, could or would be available to the public to view at that time.
Scott, the next question's for you. Runners and bikers are often seen on the sides of Ackman Road. Will there be consideration given to multiple Ackman Road crossing locations? And is there concern about people using those crossings if they're not spaced conveniently?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is yes. We know for a fact that today people are using Ackman Road to walk, to bike, to run. because we've conducted traffic counts and we've seen them out there using the corridor, even though there are gaps in the sidewalk and trail network today. So as was stated earlier, a key goal of this project is to provide continuous bicycle and pedestrian accommodations along all of Ackman Road, in addition to providing crossing locations where people can safely get from the north side to the south side of Ackman Road. So yes, I mean, the feedback we get from today's meeting will help the project team assess where those crossings are installed, what those crossings would look like, whether they're at grade crossing at street level, or if they're overpasses or underpasses. That's all kind of feedback we'd love to hear from everyone that attended today, as well as the comments we've got on our project website.
Okay. Segment 2 appears to affect the greatest number of neighborhoods. How does the county prioritize which segment will be improved first?
Yeah, so I think this was mentioned earlier, but due to limited funding for transportation projects, the county will likely prioritize future improvements to the Ackman Road corridor and phase in projects over a number of years. The prioritization of future projects will be accomplished by, one, gathering input from the public as we are today, but also by identifying federal, state grants that could help the county in funding the construction of these projects. Since this project spans 3 different municipalities, we'd also like to work closely with our local government stakeholders to assess what are their priorities, which individual intersections or segments would they like to see the county move forward with first, and which ones are less of a priority and can wait until a later time.
Thank you, Scott. I think you answered a number of questions that actually came in tonight. So, and that was our final pre-submitted question as well. So I am going to move on to the questions that were submitted tonight and start running down the list of those. So the first question, I believe, Jesse, based on the 2050 traffic volumes, how many lanes would be required for the proposed roundabout alternatives?
Yeah, specifically with option 2, or segment 2, sorry, we kind of walked through what those various roundabout configurations would be. Most of those, or at least half of them, being kind of your standard single lane roundabout, which again was just 1 lane in, 1 lane around the roundabout, and then 1 lane out. Huntley in particular, had a few different variations to that with the bypass right turn lanes, as well as 2 lanes in the eastbound direction. It was noted during the pre-recorded presentation as well that specifically at Golf Course, mainly just due to the higher traffic volumes at that intersection as compared to the other 6 that were looked at, that one would be a multi-lane roundabout with 2 lanes entering, 2 lanes around, and 2 lanes exiting the roundabout. But again, those intersections further to the west, or the western half of the corridor, those would be predominantly just single lane roundabouts.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. I'm going to ask, there's a series of questions about right turn lanes at Swanson, at Redtail, and at Huntley. They asked why possibly not are right turn lanes or turn lanes at those intersections being looked at. Can you explain how we actually did look at those and what the guidance is on that?
Yeah, specifically the right turn lanes, with the safety analysis and the traffic analysis that was conducted, the addition of right turn lanes was really predicated upon, does it make the intersection more safe? And does it help it to operate at an acceptable level of service? In particular, at those 3 intersections, with either the option 1, which again was maintaining the one-way stops or the stop control along the side streets, but adding turn lanes, as well as options 2 and 4, which were the traffic signal options. Each one of those options did construct or did propose a right turn lane at those 3 intersections, not only along Ackman Road, but also along the side street as well.
Jesse, when is cost analysis for these options done?
Yeah, so I mean, cost was considered or was one of the factors with the feasibility study. However, on a much higher level than you would see in either a phase 1 or a phase 2 study, which is where you kind of see your very detailed cost estimates. Really, the cost comparison was based on kind of some historical evidence, with regards to our roundabouts generally cheaper than traffic signals. Are there more maintenance costs associated with one versus the other when you kind of take a 20 to 30 year look at costs? So the green, yellow, and red shades that we were showing in the evaluation matrices, they weren't necessarily based on, a line item by line item cost. It was really, what's the general footprint of the intersection? How do they compare to one another, rather than identifying, is it really $10 million or $10.1 million?
Thanks, Jesse. Can you also take this? Are there, I just lost it. Are there any plans to increase Ackman to 4 lanes from the current 2 lanes?
Yes, thanks, Sammy. So hopefully to clarify for that, the improvements were looked at, again, at 7 intersections along the corridor, which were initially identified as those being the most likely to need improvements in the year 2050. As far as whether or not Ackman Road is going to be 4 lanes, which I'm assuming is it going to be 2 lanes in each direction? As was noted during the pre-recorded presentation, the only location that warrants 2 through lanes in each direction is really the traffic signal option and the roundabout option at Golf Course Road. Everywhere else along the corridor, Westport Ridge even, between Randall and Golf Course, but also west of Golf Course, those would not require with any option, again, either being the roundabout or the traffic signal, 2 lanes in both directions. Do want to point out that with the roundabout, some of them did require 2 lanes in a particular direction. Huntley did have 2 lanes in the eastbound direction. And then with the realignment of Swanson and with Redtail, the roundabout option there did also require 2 lanes in the westbound direction, but predominantly no. The options that were considered would not result in 2 lanes in each direction along Ackman.
Thank you. Jesse or Ben, are smaller interim improvements being considered along Ackman Road before long-term improvements can be implemented?
Yeah, so Ben, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll hop in here. So we will be considering interim improvements to move forward in the near term, but long-term, larger scale improvements such as intersection expansion or additional lanes would be later on in the future. Thank you.
Thanks. Scott, can you take what is the estimated timeline for construction?
Yeah, no problem. So the county every year updates what's called its 5-year transportation program. And what that is it's basically a document that prioritizes projects and funding over the next 5 years so that the county has the knowledge that we have enough money to fund the projects we're committed to. The current draft 5-year transportation program covers the years from 2021 to 2025. And it's scheduled to be adopted by the county board in November. The draft program identifies construction after the year 2025. So it's not even in this current five-year time frame. However, engineering, phase 1 engineering, as well as phase 2 engineering is identified in our current 5-year transportation program. So I can't give you a specific date, but I will say that it's going to be at least 5 years before we're entering construction.
Thank you, Scott. There was one comment question that I think, Scott, you might be able to give a little background to CMAP and how they analyze. Someone brought up the situation with COVID and the Long Meadow Bridge across the Fox River. And they questioned if either one of those may have impacts to Ackman Road and how that could impact the county plan.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I can say with certainty that obviously CMAP didn't see the pandemic coming, and so their future traffic projections do not take into account the impact of COVID-19 on traffic volumes on Ackman Road. However, even though we have seen traffic volumes decline quite significantly over the last few months, we would expect that once the pandemic is under control, that traffic volumes would actually increase to a level where they were pre-pandemic. So, Long Meadow, all the larger projects that are currently under construction or will be constructed soon, those projects are built into CMAP's models. So they already anticipate that Long Meadow will be built, and the traffic projections for Ackman Road in 2050 reflect those projections.
Thank you, Scott. I think with that one, I'm just scanning to make sure. I believe we have covered all of the remaining questions. Just want to make sure we're not missing anything that were sent in live. So if there are not any further questions, let me check. Yeah, I do not see any. Catherine does have one final Mentimeter poll, so we would appreciate your participation in that. So I will turn it over to Catherine now.
Great. All right, so our last poll of the evening. So we're going to go back to our Menti poll, and if you don't have it open, feel like we're poll pros by now, go to menti.com and use the code 948735. And when you are at the poll, click the heart in the bottom right-hand corner if you're on your computer, or the heart in the center if you're on your phone. Looks like people are doing that, so we'll give it a few more seconds and we'll be good to go. Great, let's get started. So our first question is, which issues are the highest priority? And you can select all that apply: intersections, bicycle and pedestrian, traffic operations, and safety. Great, I'll give it a few more seconds. Looks like intersections takes highest priority from our audience right now, followed by safety. Great. Looks like most people have responded, so I'm going to move on to our last poll of the evening. And this is an open-ended question. Do you have any additional concerns for Ackman Road? And we will not be sharing people's responses on the slide. So this was our last question for the evening. I'll be leaving this question open for a little bit to give time for people to respond in the case you're not done entering. Thank you all for providing feedback this evening and using the Mentimeter poll.
Thank you, Catherine, for the final Mentimeter question. With that, that will conclude our public meeting for tonight. On behalf of McHenry County Division of Transportation, I would like to thank all of you for joining us this evening. We anticipate posting the recording of this meeting, hopefully by October 9th, for those to view again or who were not able to view it tonight. The results from tonight's Mentimeter poll will be posted to the project website as well. Comments and questions and concerns can continue to be submitted until October 23rd to be included in the feasibility study report. All answers to submitted questions from the public will be posted to the project's website following the closing of the comment period. All exhibits from tonight's meeting will be available on the project webpage as well. With that, thank you and have a nice evening.